Hello everyone, I'm Orfo here. As promised, I'm putting together now a build video for my stress-free Magicka Sorcerer that this time will focus not only on VMA but Trials as well. So I'm going to talk about a couple of different setups to help you complete Veteran Maelstrom Arena without too much fuss, without too much stress, as well as a setup that will enable you to take part in raids, both normal trials and veteran trials. I need to ask you to forgive my voice. As in my previous video, I've been struggling with my voice. I've been struggling with a virus for the past few weeks and it's not cleared out completely, but really I didn't want to wait any further to put together this video, as a number of you have been asking me about whether or not things have changed with the Dragonbones patch, and they have. There have not been major changes, only one set has changed, but we'll get to that in a minute. So you will notice straight away I'm not a vampire anymore. The only reason why I'm not a vampire, it's not because I was struggling with managing the extra fire damage or anything like that. It's simply because I got tired of the way they look. They're just so ugly. And since I was sustaining okay even without vampirism, I decided to heal myself of it. But by any means, you know, if you're okay with the way vampires look and you're not as fussy as I am, remain a vampire. Let me just get started by taking a look at my buff stats. Okay, there you go. Spell damage 4k, which is an excellent amount. Spell critical 41.9%, but that value is really irrelevant because of one of the sets that we're using. Max Magicka 44.4k, a very good Magicka pool there. Magicka recovery, there it says 1307, but when I pop a potion and my shield goes up to 1500, just over 1500. Now that's a very good amount of recovery for a non-vampire. Well, in general, 1500 is more than enough on a PvE character, so you will not have any problems sustaining. Now, spell resistance and physical resistance, again, very much standard for this type of build, but really you shouldn't worry too much about your squishiness because you've got very large shields. As I said, I'm not a vampire anymore, but you can be, and I'm using the apprentice for extra spell damage. Now, if you wanted to focus on VMA, probably you'd want to swap to the lover. That increases your your spell penetration. Now that will be particularly useful with a couple of bosses that have, I think, 18k resistances. But because there's only 2 in VMA with that type of resistance, I'd rather go with the apprentice. Helps me to drop any kind of trash, any kind of mobs and mini bosses much faster than the lover. Because you see, if you're over penetrating, you're just missing out on your Mundus Stone altogether. So this is why I choose to go with the apprentice. This is particularly apt if you're doing trials, because there's definitely going to be someone in your team that is going to debuff the bosses, hence granting you that extra penetration that you need. So these are my stats. Let me just move quickly to my consumables. Okay, so for my consumables, I'm still using Witch Mother's Potent Brew. You can go with blue food, that gives you max magic and max health, but I'm not too keen on that. See, my build doesn't rely on pets, so it doesn't rely on heavy attacks, so you want to be able to sustain much more with your base Magicka recovery than you would if you based your damage on heavy attacks and pets. This is a non-pet build. I hate pet builds, not because they're bad, they're very good, they pump out lots of damage, but I just don't like their playstyle. It's too passive. I'd rather play without them. So I'm still using Witch Mother's Potence Brew. Then for for potions, there's a few options. There's Tri-Stats that I've almost run out of. These are quite good when you find yourself running out of stamina. Now I normally slot them in at the last boss of VMA because I need to do a couple of roll dodges, particularly when I'm on the top floor trying to destroy the crystals. But that's really the only situation in which I use them. Mostly I use just plain Magicka potions that you can find on trash mobs. Okay, they're not the best, but they're cheap. In fact, they're free, and with your stats, you already sustain quite well. So I often find them quite sufficient. If, on the other hand, you still find it difficult to sustain with just these, I would suggest you craft your own that give you 1500 extra Magicka and much longer Magicka recovery. And when you're doing trials, since you don't have to rely on crit surge, which gives you major sorcery, I would recommend running Essence of Spell Power. Now this one gives you major sorcery but not major prophecy, because you get major prophecy from Inner Light, which is in both bars. But really you want to use Essence of Spell Power with or without major prophecy, as long as it's got major sorcery, because it frees up a slot for an extra skill that will increase your DPS. I'm gonna go through DPS in a moment. Yeah, because in trials there's always gonna be a dedicated healer, so you don't have to self-heal through crit surge. So yeah, just drop that skill, put another skill that deals damage. We're gonna go through the options in a moment, and swap to Essence of Spell Power. Now they can be a bit expensive if you have limited resources gold wise. See, I've got over 4 million gold. That's not a problem, but if you do have a problem with spending money on potions or the ingredients to make them, just keep crit surge in, get your major sorcery and major prophecy from your skills rather than your potions. Now let's get to the juicy stuff a little bit and talk about the gear. Now my front bar got an Asylum Lightning Staff. Now this is not perfected. If you've got access to perfected, by all means use that one. It will definitely increase your DPS. But these are fairly easy to find, and you just grind an Asylum, the Asylum Sanctorium in Clockwork City on normal level, and whatever trait you get it, you then change it. So it's not as hard as it used to be. At one point I remember grinding VMA for the right weapons in the right trait. It was such a nightmare. Nowadays yeah, it's not that hard to get the weapons we want in the right traits. So yeah, use the Asylum Lightning Staff at the front. Every third cast of Force Shock will always apply Burning, Concussion and Chill status effects. Now this really makes an awful lot of difference on this particular build, so if you have it, please use it. If not, just put a random crafted staff at the front. You can, I've got lightning, so I use lightning also because I've got fire at the back, as I'm gonna show you in a second. But I think ideally what you want is either lightning at the back and fire at the front, or lightning both at the back and at the front. Now back bar I've got Maelstrom Inferno Staff. got Inferno simply because I mean I've got so many doubles of all the other weapons. Got tons of shield, tons of one hands, tons of two hands, tons of staves, but no lightning stave, which is just incredible. I'm so unlucky with that, but I've decided to really keep on grinding until I find it. But anyway, I've got Maelstrom Inferno stuff at the back. Now, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. In fact, you will find in Maelstrom that a number of mobs are susceptible to fire, and so that really helps. And because you've got both fire and lightning on your staves, that increases your chances of proccing both effects on Ilambris, but I'll get to that in a second. I front staff is Nernhund with a shock damage enchant, and then on my back bar I've got well, it's infused with an increased weapon damage and spell damage enchant. So you see it's 452 extra damage for 5 seconds. So this one basically it's up all the time. It's very important that you learn to weave light attacks in between your skills. Then I've got, as in the previous build, in previous setup, Ilambris, head and shoulder. Everything is divine and everything is enchanted with max magicka enchants. Now, if you're doing trials, and in trials it is recommended that you have at least 17k health. What you want to do for, not all the time, but for trials and stages where it is required that you have at least 70k health, you can swap Ilambris for Valkyrie Scoria, and you can put a tri-stack glyph on the head, and that should take you easily to 17k, even though you would you'll miss out on a thousand, just over 1,000 max magicka. But again, when you've got 44k max magicka, it's not gonna be a massive difference. So Ilambris, guys, most of circumstances, and then I would swap to Valkyrie Scoria excuse me, in case you were struggling health wise. Then in for my 5-piece I've swapped from Julianus to Mechanical Acuity. Now Mechanical Acuity is a very interesting set. Adds 2 items grant you weapon damage, which is useless to you. 3rd item spell damage. 4th item max stamina and max magicka. But really it's the 5th bonus that what makes this set so juicy. When you deal damage, you have a 15% chance to gain unerring mechanical vision for 5 seconds, causing your attacks to always be a critical strike. This effect can occur once every 18 seconds. Now, I'll show you how it works. There you go. When you become blue like this, all of your attacks are critical, which increases your damage by quite a bit. It's quite good. I noticed a 3-4k DPS difference between Mechanical Acuity and Julianos. Now they're both craftable sets, so it's very easy to acquire, and I would strongly encourage you to use that instead of Julianos. Now Julianos performance is more steady, it's more consistent, whereas Mechanical Acuity, you get that increased damage when the set procs, and the cooldown is 18 seconds, although to those 18 seconds you need to reduce the 5 seconds of the proc itself. So you've got 13 seconds where that effect isn't up, but even nonetheless you still produce more DPS with this set than with Julianos. Now for my brings. Oh, by the way, my body pieces. I've got a 5-1-1 setup to make the most of the Undaunted passive, Undaunted metal. So I've got heavy chest and medium legs, and everything else light, everything divines, everything enchanted with max magicka enchants. And then for my jewelry, I've got good old faithful willpower. I've done some tests with infallible ether, and although you gain minor slayer at all times, increasing your damage done to dungeon and trial monsters by 5%. I don't know. I didn't seem to get a higher DPS. In fact, it was sometimes it was considerably lower. I don't know if it was because I was messing up every now and again. But the feeling I had was that it wasn't synergizing with the mechanical acuity as well as willpower. So I would suggest you stick with willpower. Now, when Summerset hits, I'm gonna change a couple of things. First of all, I'm gonna keep on using mechanical acuity, but I'm gonna drop my Asylum Lightning staff and use a mechanical acuity staff instead, so that I can make sure that mechanical acuity procs on my front bar only. That will help me control its proc a bit better and produce DPS that is more consistent. And as my second 5-piece, I would use Julianos. So I would use a Maelstrom staff at the back, mechanical acuity that procs at the front, and then Julianos, the 5-piece of Julianos on all the time, and then keep on using Ilambris. That's what I will be doing for Summerset, and I already know that this is gonna be most probably the best setup, or at least the easiest setup, because both sets are craftable apart from Maelstrom, the Maelstrom Destro staff that will be on my back bar. So yes, the jewelry is enchanted with spell damage enchants, all of them. Let me just quickly move to my skills and show you what I've got. The skill setup is basically the same. Power surge for major surge. Power surge. Oh, sorry, I kept calling it crit surge, but that's the other morph. Sorry, it's power surge that you want, and that's not only for your major sorcery, but also because critical strikes heal you for 2.5k health. So this is essential for VMA, but for trials you want to drop this and put another skills that deals damage. You could go for Hunting Curse, you could go for Crystal Fragment. It's entirely up to you. Then I've got Inner Light, both on front and back bar for and not only max magicka and a bit of magicka recovery, but also but particularly to give me major prophecy at all time. Then I've got Bound Aegis. Okay, never mind the resistance, which is okay, but really it's more to give me a buff to my magicka pool by 8%, which is a lot. Then I've got Crushing Shock. The reason why I go for this morph is because of its ranged interrupt. It is so super useful in a number of trials and in a number of stages of VMA. Now, if you are confident that you can interrupt bosses and interrupt mobs simply by bashing them with your staff, use the other morph. That gives you a slightly more DPS, but this is really what I prefer. Again, this build is not to break any type of DPS records. This is to get you through veteran content, both solo like VMA or group, particularly veteran trials, and not be a burden to the team, but actually be a very good source of DPS. Now, for trials, most guilds would expect you, especially for veteran trials, they would expect you to produce anything between 25 and 30k DPS. With this one, you can easily produce 32k DPS, and with this setup, okay, with the skills as you see them right here, with both power surge and empowered ward at the back. I'll show you how DPS passes at the end of the video. I think I mess it up and I still hit 31.5k DPS. So yeah, this setup is excellent, getting you through VMA and getting you through any veteran trials without spending stupid money on pots or gear. Okay, everything is craftable apart from your staves, but that are fairly easy to obtain, and willpower is very cheap to buy. So yeah, going back to my skills, this is the VMA set. Okay, the VMA setup. Power surge, inner light, bound aegis, crushing shock, endless fury as a finisher, and also for sustain. And then on my front bar I've got Ice Comet. I keep this one on my front bar because it's cheaper than Fiery Rage. Okay, Fiery Rage is 213 ultimate, whereas Ice Comet is 170. Sometimes the boss is near death and you don't have Fiery Rage up, but you have Ice Comet up, so you just drop that one. On my back bar I've got Empowered Ward. I use this morph because you see I get almost 20k shield, which is way more than my health pool anyway. So it protects me very well, and it also buffs my Magicka recovery by 10% while it's up. Then I've got again Inner Light and Bound Aegis. They need to be double slotted. Lightning Flood, although I might change to the other morph in the next patch. DPS wise, this one would still be better, but the other one lasts 2 seconds more. That matches my Blockade of Fire, so I can put them down at the same time and recast them at the same time without overcasting either of them. So it will be helpful with sustain, and it will make my rotation a bit easier. So I've got Lightning Flood, which is I think the best dot in the game at the moment. Blockade of Fire, and then as I said, Fiery Rage. This is a fantastic ultimate. I would use it anytime I'm in a bit of a tough spot and I'm surrounded by enemies. Not only will it burn them all, but every time someone dies by it will restore my Magicka, and this is because of this passive. Let me just find it. When you kill an enemy with a destruction staff ability, you restore 3600 Magicka. So yeah, great skill. I think it's probably the best ultimate in game for PvE. So there we go. Now let me talk quickly about the trial setup. Now in a trial situation, you don't need power surge and you don't need empowered ward if you have 17k health. If you don't, you might still want to keep it there. Now in a trial situation, you want to swap these two skills that basically don't deal any damage and swap them with something that on the other hand does produce damage. And my advice would be to have Crystal Frag at the front and Haunting Curse at the back. Now if you wanted, you could swap, you could put Haunting Curse here and keep Empowered Ward here. You would use Major Prophecy at the back, but if you use Spell Power Pots that give you both Major Prophecy and Major Sorcery, this will enable you to produce a lot more, well, a lot more DPS, while still enjoying the protective benefits of Empowered Ward. Now, I've seen people using this exact setup on while recording a DPS, and they hit 42k. If I find the video, I will put it in the description below. But it was quite impressive. 42k with this setup, this exact setup. Very, very good for when well, for any kind of trials. So this is how I would change my skills when doing trials. My gear remains the same, but my skills change. For VMA, on the other hand, I would still use where is it? Power Surge at the front with Endless Fury. Now, if you didn't like Endless Fury, you could put frags, and then at the back, leave it as it is with Inner Light. What is it? Mage's Guild with Inner Light there. For trials, on the other hand, you put Crystal Frag instead of Power Surge, and then Haunting Curse at the back, either in place of Empowered Ward or in place of Inner Light. Now, my let's move on to my champion point. I got 7 points into Warlord and 5 points into Sprinter, because every now and again I do run, although it's very rare, and I do break free. These two you could reassign somewhere else, whichever way you want. You can put them into Mooncalf, into Tenacity, but that's how I run. I know this may not be min-maxed, but really I'm not bothered. So I've got 43 points into Mooncalf for stamina recovery for the odd occasion in which you have to dodge roll and stuff like that. 75 into Arcanist. If you wanted, you could put another 25 points into here and reach the cap, which will bring it up to 15%. It's only 1% extra, but there you go. It's not very cost effective in terms of champion points allocation, but that's something that other people, so I've seen some people do. 56 point into Tenacity, because you will be doing a number of heavy attacks in order to sustain your damage. Well, not your damage, to sustain your Magicka. Then I've got 31 points into Tumbling, reducing the cost of roll dodge. In fact, I would probably suggest taking these and putting them here instead. 23 points into Shadow Word, because every now and again you will have to block. Now I've got 44 points into Elfborn, 41 points into Spell Erosion, 43 into Elemental Expert. If you wanted, now that you will be using Mechanical Acuity, you could put more points into here to maximize your critical strikes damage. Then I've got 37 points into Master at Arms, 75 into Thaumaturge. This to unlock the Exploiter passive here that increases your damage done against off-balance enemies by 10%. Now, this one's not as useful as it used to be in the previous patch, because the cooldown on this passive has been reduced, but I find that it's still very much powerful. Not as much as in previous patch, but still worth using. Then on the red tree, I've got 40 points into Ironclad, 37 into Thick Skin, 43 into Hardian Elemental Defender, 3 points into Light Armor Focus because I didn't know where else to put them, 72 points into Bastion for your shields, and then 2 points into Expert Defender. Now, so I think I've covered everything. Yes, we talked about more or less everything. I also talked about my idea of changes to put to this build with the launch of Summerset, which I'm really looking forward to. And I think this is very much it. Oh, people ask me what race I am. High Elf, 100% the best race for this kind of build and class. And I think this is it. Now I'm gonna show you a clip that I've recorded of our DPS passes that I mess up quite a bit and still produce 31.5k DPS. So I'm not the best PvEer. In fact, I PvE to PvP. I PvE to get gear and weapons to use in PvP. So so yeah, I'm not the best, and yet I still produce over 30k DPS quite consistently. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me down below. Leave a comment and a like if you found this build useful, and let me know how you get on if you use it. With VMA, really, some people say, well, I've been using your build and I still haven't managed to finish it. Well, because it's not just about the build, it's about knowing the mechanics, becoming familiar. So it's all about trial and error. I've seen people completing it completely naked, so with no gear whatsoever, and not even a proper weapon, as they used a broom. so yeah, VMA, it's all about knowing its mechanics and anticipating them. So keep on trying. If you fail, it's not the build's fault. It simply means that you've got to try a bit harder and become more familiar with it. But eventually you'll get there. So yeah, good luck out there. Good luck with VMA. May the RNG gods favor you. Unlike me, I've not got my lightning stuff yet, but I'm sure you'll get there. Until then, good luck, and I'll see you around.